Hey guys, so today we'll be going over ISEF Form 1A, the student checklist. The ISEF form overview, which includes the student checklist and the research plan / project summary. The student checklist is required for all projects. No matter what, you'll be filling out this form. This includes the general information like addresses and stuff like that, and also data collection dates. This also includes the research plan and abstract. The research plan / project summary is required for all projects also. It needs to be completed before experimentation, which is very important. This is a student checklist 1A. The student team leader will be you, unless you have a team leader. The grade will be whatever grade you're in. The email will be your email so that we can contact you if need be. You also need to put your phone number in there so that if we can't reach you by email, we can reach you through phone number. Now, if you have team members, you can put team members in parts B and C. I'm by myself, so I don't have any. Next is the title of the project. I'm doing how ISEF is affecting students in schools. Now, once you get a title of your project, you can move on to part 3, your school. Now, I go to Oklahoma State University, so I'll put that down right now, and then I'll put their phone number down so that they can reach my school if need be. You also need to put your school address in there so that whenever they mail you your first place trophy, you know where to go get it. Your adult sponsor will be whoever's overviewing you throughout this process. Mine's Mason Beliski, and I'll put their email down or their phone number. I'm going to put their phone number here. Number 5. Now this goes into, does this project need SRC, IRB, or IACUC approval? You know, this depends on what you're researching in your project. The IRB is the Institutional Review Board, which is human participants, which can be found on page 5. The SRC is a Scientific Review Committee, which is vertebrate animals and potentially dangerous biological agents. And the IACUC is the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Now, if you have any of those, you need to fill that out. My tentative start date is in September, and we need to know if this is a continuation from previous year. Mine's yes, so that I need to attach the previous year's abstract and research plan summary. We also need to explain if this project is new. Basically, we need to know if you're not doing the same thing over and over again. Now, we need to also put in the dates that we are going to be collecting data. Mine's going to be from around September to January. Your dates will be more specific and go with your research plan. Now, where will you conduct your research? I'm at Oklahoma State, so I'll put research institution. And now you need to list the names and addresses of non-home and non-school work sites. This is like if you work anywhere else besides the institution that you are going on. Now, this is all the information that is needed for this form, and we'll go on to the next form now. Research plan / project summary, part 1. This is your project summary part of the form. Okay, so number 1 says that all projects must have a research plan / project summary, and this must be written prior to experimentation, following the instruction below to detail the rationale, research questions, methodology, and risk assessment of the proposed research. This is very important. If changes are made during the research, then you need to change your research plan. That's very, very important. Your research plan must back up your research. If no changes are made, though, you don't have nothing to worry about. Also, number 2 says that some studies such as engineering, design, or mathematics may be less detailed in the initial project plan and will be through the course of research. If such changes occurs, a project summary that explains what was done is required and can be appended to the original research plan. So make sure you keep that in mind. The research plan / project summary part 2 goes on to number 3, which is the research plan / project summary should include the following. Now this goes on to detail the individual parts that need to be included into your research plan. The first part is the rationale. Now, this is a brief synopsis of the background that supports your research problem and explain why this research is important, and if applicable, you need to explain the sociological impact of your research. This is so that the judges can know why your research really matters, you know, the background that supports it, what backs it up, and what are you building off of. Next, part B says you need to answer the research questions, the hypothesis, the engineering goals, and the expected outcome. You know, you need to have your hypothesis, what you think will happen, your goals throughout this, what are you trying to accomplish, what do you expect will happen whenever you conduct your research. Part C is another part which you need to describe the following in detail, your procedures. You need to describe what you did in this lab, what data you collected from what, how did it go, how was the first trial, second trial, stuff like that. You need to also describe your risk and safety. This is identifying all potential risks that are involved with your lab. These labs can get pretty dangerous. You need to take safety into consideration. You need to have your safety precautions detailed, written down so that the judges can see that you were safe throughout this process. You also need to have a detailed data analysis. You're taking data for a reason, and the judges need to be able to understand it. So make sure you get a detailed data analysis in your research plan. You also need to have a bibliography. So this is important because we cannot do this by ourselves, guys. You have to have resources and things you learned along the way. We're not experts in anything, so make sure you have a detailed bibliography in your references. The research plan / project summary, part 3. So this one is more applicable to the type of research that you did. So if you had human participants, you need to fill out this section, have all this stuff included. You need to have the participants, the age range, gender, racial, ethnic composition. You need to have all the information so that we can know exactly the type of people that you did the research on and how that might influence the study. You also need to have recruitment. How will you find the participants? How will they be invited to participate? You need to have all this information so the judges know you did it in a reasonable way. Also the methods. What will participants be asked to do? Will you use any surveys, questionnaires, or tests? If yes, and not your own, how did you obtain these? The judges want to know everything you did to these humans. So you also need to have the risk assessment. Bringing humans into a research is always dangerous and there's always risk assessed with it. So you need to identify those potential discomforts, physical, psychological, time involved, social, legal, etc. You need to have all that written down and what will you do to minimize that risk to each participant? You need to add a protection of privacy. Will the identifiable information, names, telephone numbers, birthdays, are they going to be collected in your surveys or in your research? And will this data be confidential? That's very important. And if not, what are you doing with that data? You need to have all this written down. This needs to be a humane research project. And part F is informed consent process. These people need to be consenting to what you are doing to them. You need to write down how you got that consent and stuff like that. And now we'll move on. The research plan / project summary, part 4. This is continuation of, depending on the type of research you had, you'll have to fill out these. The part 2 is a vertebrate animal research. Now, vertebrate animals is a last resort, guys. You need to think about all the other alternatives you can use. You need to write down why you can't use any other organisms and why you have to use your organism. You also need to explain the potential impact or contribution of this research. There has to be a reason for why you're investigating these animals and why you're putting these animals through this research. You need to write that down so the judges know that it's important. You also need to detail all procedures to be used, including methods to minimize potential discomfort, distress, pain. These animals are living creatures. We have to make sure they're comfortable throughout the entire time, and you need to write down everything you do to them, down to every single action. You also need to detail animal numbers, species, strain, sex, age. Just like the humans, we gotta know everything about these living animals. You also need to describe housing and oversight of daily care. They're living animals, again, we gotta take care of them, guys. Also need to discuss the disposition of the animals at the termination of this study. Whenever you're done with these animals, what's gonna happen to them? Where do they go? And then finally, not finally, but number 3, potentially hazardous biological agents research. You need to give source of the organism and describe BSL assessments, process, and BSL determination. Okay, that's very important. You describe safety precautions and discuss methods of disposal. These chemicals can get very dangerous. The judges want to know that you handle them with care and dispose of them with care, like a reasonable scientist should. And finally, number 4, hazardous chemicals and activities and devices. You need to describe the risk assessment process. These are dangerous chemicals, guys. You have to, before you decide to research them, you have to understand that they are dangerous. You need to write down that you do understand them so the judges know that. You need to describe who's going to supervise you. You cannot do this by yourself. You have to have supervision. And the safety precautions you're going to take along the way. Also, you need to have the material safety data sheets are not necessary to submit with paperwork. Guys, I want to say thank you and also good luck at this year's ISEF competitions.